Opinions expressed on this radio program do not necessarily reflect the views of this radio station.
My friends and I always tune into the Todd Levitt Law Show. Todd is entertaining, informative, and always delivers the goods.
Todd might not tell you what you want to hear, but he's going to tell you what you need to hear. And all you got to do is listen.
Hold on, Todd. Don't let go. It's time for the Todd L. Levitt Law Show.
Welcome to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. Good morning, good evening, and good night. I'm yours truly, attorney Todd L. Levitt, broadcasting and podcasting in the middle of Mitten, in the Black Diamond Group mothership, in a beautiful green flower nutrient field with my good friend Craig Russell, the muscle. The water is wet, the sky is blue, roses are red, Craig Russell. And the listeners love you. How you doing, Craig?
I am fan-flippin-tastic. How are you, Todd?
I am full of Pedialyte and applesauce and enjoying a little bit of ice cream cake today.
Ice cream cake, is that the strain of the week today?
No, it's my birthday next week, Craig. I'm enjoying I'm eating ice cream cake.
Oh, okay.
Why does everything have to be a strain of the week with you? Everything. You'll call me on the phone during the week. Hey, Todd, what are you doing? I'm having a cherry Pop-Tart. And you'll say, Todd, is that a new strain, cherry Pop-Tart? And I'll say, well, it could be, Craig. It could be somewhere. I'm sure cherry Pop-Tart, if it's not already a terrific hybrid or indica strain, it's going to be after this show.
Well, I mean, seriously, every time we talk about stuff, it's always these strains that sound like food and things. So I never know when you're actually eating food or when you're actually using the strain of the week or something like that. So
no, truth be told, ice cream cake goes out to little John out there. Yes. Hey, what's up, little John, who's supposed to be coming on the show? Ice cream cake is the strain of the week, show. Yeah, so I was just screwing around today.
You were just funning with me is what you were doing.
But I am consuming Pedialyte. That was not a joke. Can you see this right here?
Yeah, I can see. Why do you have Pedialyte and applesauce? Are you not well?
Not to mention the sport beans. See this little pack of
what is that all
sport
about?
beans here?
What is that
Well,
all about?
I'm definitely going to be shredding the gnar after the show. Big Hair and I
right on, okay.
are going out for a gravel shred on the backcountry roads of Clare and Isabella County, Big Hair and I. So I'm hydrating, consuming some applesauce, and loading up on electrolytes before I head out.
I'll tell you this much. I don't know what the weather's like in other parts of the country, but the weather is supposed to be very nice today. It was pretty nice yesterday. It's getting nicer and nicer. It feels more like spring pretty soon. There'll be no turning back. It will actually be spring in Michigan, and that will be a good thing.
It will be spring, and that brings us to a huge announcement that we often announce on the show. First weekend of June, Friday the 4th and 5th, the 420 Canna Hemp Expo is just going to be destroying Isabella County at the Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. The exhibit hall will take place in the concert venue inside the amazing complex. Exactly.
That's a big deal.
And the exhibitor list that I've been privy to through Heidi is just stellar. 2 years ago, Craig, when you and I were hosts to the first expo at the casino on 420, we had close to 60 exhibitors. This year, we are at 80.
Wow.
And exactly.
Wow.
And it's just amazing. So be sure, folks, to sign up for some of our special presentations that will be taking place at the 420 Canna Hemp Expo. Craig, you and I will be there, and there's some really big celebrities from the sports community who may be appearing as well. And we'll have further announcements, as we get closer to the first weekend of June. Free to the public, by the way.
It's always been free to the public. That's going to be the hallmark of the 420 Canna Hemp Expo. So sports stars, I don't even know anything about this. I thought I was a big deal, but I guess I'm not.
Craig, you are a big deal, Craig. What are you talking about?
No, I'm not. I'm just a nothing.
We have a huge show, by the way. We opened up with one of my all-time favorite top 10 groups and solo performers that came out of one of those top 10 groups. And who would that be, Craig?
That would be Genesis and Mama. Phil Collins. Phil Collins was. I saw him on a question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire a couple of nights ago. The old version of the show.
What was the question?
It was which member who left the band was known for his drumming, even though he can't drum anymore because he's got nerve damage. And it was, they were Sting, Eric Clapton, Phil Collins, and I think it was Steven Tyler. And so, he was the only one who was a drummer. Phil Collins can't drum anymore because of nerve damage in his ears. But he was the drummer for Genesis forever and ever and ever. Do you know who the first lead singer of Genesis was? The original lead singer? Who is
do.
Who is that?
That would be Craig Russell of Kalamazoo, Michigan.
That would be me. Yes, I used to tour with Genesis back in the 70s when I was 6.
Who was it?
It was Peter Gabriel. Peter Gabriel was the original lead singer.
Oh, yeah,
of
that
Genesis.
makes sense.
Yeah,
who went on to have his own solo career.
Yes, he did. And then when he left, it went from a foursome to a threesome. It was Tony Banks, Mike Rutherford, and Phil Collins, and he took over a lot of the songwriting / lead singing duties. And they're supposed to be getting back together, Genesis. They were supposed to get back together last fall, but they've decided they're going to wait and get together this fall. And it's going to be Phil Collins' son, Nick, doing the drumming for Genesis. So we opened the show with Mama, but I've got to believe, knowing how we do this every week, that was probably not the original song that you wanted to open the show with. What did you originally really want to open the show with?
Yeah, Mama was my second choice from Genesis, Phil Collins. My first choice, and this goes out to all of the listeners out there who listen to the show, and that would be, 15 Amish, a couple relatives of yours and mine, M66 and Little John, by the way. So
and maybe Big Hair. And maybe
always Big Hair.
And maybe Vinny Kate, and that's about it.
And Vinny Kate as well. Yeah, so for sure. Yep.
So what was the song? What's the song that you wanted to do? You said all that stuff, but we didn't say what the song was.
By the Sea. Home by the Sea.
Also by Genesis as well. It's a Genesis twofer. We're a classic rock that rocks.
Let's play it, Craig.
Yeah, Genesis twofer on the Todd Levitt Rock Show.
Yeah.
Home by the sea. Home by the sea. sea, home by the sea. Creeping up the blind side, shining up the wall, stealing through the dark of night. Climbing through a window, step into the floor, checking to the left and the right. Picking up the pieces, putting them away. Something doesn't feel quite right. Help me, someone, let me out of here. Then out of the dark we suddenly heard, welcome to the home by the sea.
You know, for Genesis, who had a lot of big hits, especially in the 80s, you know, Susudio and all that kind of stuff, and Invisible Touch and everything, this is one of their songs that really was never a big commercial success, but everybody knows it. Home by the Sea.
And some people relate, you know, Phil Collins to Miami Vice, that great scene in Miami Vice when Tubbs and Crockett were, I don't know what road they were on, you know, 101. I'm sure.
I think it's the A1. A1.
The A1. That's correct. The A1 as you cross over, and that scene was just outstanding. And playing that song.
I can feel it coming in the air.
Yeah, we better not say.
Yeah,
we are a law show, Craig.
Yes,
well, this is not
agree.
I mean, we're part of a radio station, obviously, you know, great station, but we have a lot of law to get to. That's the truth.
Do we have a lot of law to get to?
We do have a lot of law to get to.
What do we have to talk about?
Well, we're going to be talking about something we often talk about, and that would be cannabis.
Sure.
Imagine that.
What a big shock.
Yeah, what a big shock. Also, we have an email from a listener who has a question in regards to, once again, CDL and first offense convictions in the state of Michigan and outside the state of Michigan. And then what happens if you get a second conviction under the motor vehicle code if you're a CDL holder?
Oh.
And it depends on which state you reside in. And in sticking with the CDL laws, for those individuals out there who reside in Michigan, CDL is federal, so we have a lot of listeners all over the country and the world. So if you're listening to the show and you're a CDL holder somewhere in this great country of ours, depending upon which state you are from, a lot of these laws are parallel to one another per my research, so you might want to check in the state in which you live in. If you are currently or were a CDL holder and you were in a position where the state, you know, just took it away from you indefinitely. That's it. See ya. Sorry, too many convictions. You know, the question is, will I ever have an opportunity to get it reinstated, and how do I go about doing that? I have some updated information on that.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and also out-of-state license restoration. Recently, Levitt Law Firm, you know, for decades we've represented men and women who lived in the state of Michigan. And when they did reside here, because of a few mistakes, they became denied and revoked in regards to their ability to operate a motor vehicle. Now they've lived out of state for decades, some less, some more, and can't get a license in the state in which they now reside in. How do they go about clearing that up? So we took a number of calls last week at the office regarding those issues.
I know we've talked about that before, but
I want to talk about windmills. Picking up a friend drunk.
Okay.
And I dropped the phone and ended up FaceTiming somebody in a very precarious position. Cop at the gas station.
You've had a busy week, haven't you?
And more ice cream cake, Craig.
More ice cream cake.
We've got a full show here. I need to drink some more Pedialyte. Hold on a second.
Yeah, you should. Hey, well, while you're doing that, we will take a break on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. But when we come back, we've got a whole slew of law to get to. That's coming up.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, broadcasting and podcasting for some of the listeners out there in the middle of the mitten, coming back strong once again with Home by the Sea this time, Craig. Way to come back with Home by the Sea, not Mama. Well, what was the switch up for there?
Well, that was the song that you really wanted to play, and like I said, that's one of their better known songs, even though it wasn't a super huge hit for them. But Genesis is one of your top 10 all time favorite bands that had a lead singer who ended up going solo, but also came back and did stuff with the band, if that's a category. It's something like that. Earlier you were going to explain, you were telling me you were eating the applesauce and drinking the Pedialyte. You never explained why.
Absolutely.
Why are you drinking the Pedialyte? Why are you eating applesauce?
No, I mentioned it. Big Hair and I are going out for a gravel ride.
Right. I thought you weren't. I thought you were sick or something. I thought that's why you were doing. Oh, you're bulking up. That's what you're doing. I understand now. Okay.
I mean, Pedialyte originally, or the origins of it is to assist, young children who need to become hydrated,
right,
and whatnot.
Replace electrolytes and things like that.
Prebiotics in it.
Yeah, like when kids are not well.
It also fluids and zinc.
Yep.
Right, but it's more. But it has one of the best hydrations of drinks on the market.
Right.
And, a lot of individuals out there think that you need to hydrate during activity, which is true. You always need to make sure you have fuel and electrolytes and stay hydrated.
But what
I was taught,
almost more importantly, you need to hydrate beforehand.
Yeah, I never knew that until I started becoming, actively involved in mountain bike racing. And, I talked to some of the really good racers out there. My buddy Todd Wakely, whose son Jordan is the top pro, from the state of Michigan and the Midwest, if not the country.
Right.
Todd knows so much about racing and training and hydration. He's the one. So big shout out to Todd Wakely for turning me on to hydrating before you go out and exercise.
Well, now they even run TV commercials that for the Pedialyte stuff for adults who if you're not well, maybe you've got a little stomach bug or something like that, and maybe you get a little dehydrated. They've actually, and of course, adults also use it maybe when they've possibly had a few too many to drink, and they wake up the next morning dehydrated. They actually market that now for adults to drink Pedialyte as well. It's usually a kid's drink, but
sure,
they know what they're doing. So, hey, we were going to get into all this law stuff you wanted to talk about, but first, before we do that, let's talk about this dropping the phone and FaceTiming. What happened with that?
Well, I'll tell you, I was. Let's just come clean. I mean, we're a law show. It's full disclosure here.
Right on.
I was in a urinal. Can't even say that.
Okay.
And I was, in a urinal, and the phone dropped, and apparently, the last person I spoke to was Jen. And as soon as the phone hit the floor, which is disgusting in its own right, of this location, it FaceTimed her. And all of a sudden I hear, the FaceTime, however it is.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
And obviously I'm not going to bend down and pick up the phone because I'm standing up, doing something.
Sure, you're a little preoccupied.
Long and behold, there's Jen looking up at me. And thank goodness nobody else was in this public location while she's having a conversation with me, looking up at me. It was pretty... It's a true story, but
no. Hey, luckily you weren't in. The last person you didn't call was like a judge or something. That could be way worse. At least
I don't. Jen. First off, full disclosure, I don't call any judges. I do have some friends that are judges that are personal friends of mine. But Craig, more importantly, let's get to some law.
Okay, all right.
But that is a true story.
We're moving on
from
that. Okay.
How many people out there have dropped keys and phones in toilets? I bet if you took a poll,
it's probably
the numbers would be high.
It's probably a lot.
So you had a question.
Yes, I did have a question. And so we were talking about, we had an email call. Was it an email about the CDL or was the email about, no, the email is about driver's license restoration. So we'll get to that.
No, it was both. We were going to talk about that and a CDL question.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do the CDL one first because I'm dying to know, what does CDL stand for? I've heard this term 1,000 times. Whenever we talk to Biker Bob, he uses it. You talk about it a lot. What is a CDL?
I mean, simply commercial driver's license. So CDL stands for commercial driver's license. And in order to drive a commercial vehicle in the United States, the great United States, the driver must hold a valid commercial driver's license, otherwise known as a CDL.
Makes sense. Just never knew that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm like going, you said CDL. I'm like, hey, I'm going to ask you for once. What is CDL? So you've got some information about people who are CDL holders and trying to get their driver's license restorated. Was it that one? Was that what we were talking about?
There's different classifications of CDLs, by the way. I'm not going to get into all those right now.
Right.
No, the question was, there's a lot of men and women out there around the country who, for whatever reason, made a poor choice and ended up with a conviction for some sort of drinking and driving. And in the state of Michigan, if you're convicted of a first offense and you're a CDL holder, the state of Michigan the federal government through the state of Michigan will suspend your ability to utilize that commercial driver's license for a period of 1 year, after which you can apply to get it back. But I represent a lot of men and women who are CDL holders who are looking and facing a second conviction under the motor vehicle code. And, the question is, how long a period of time, as the CDL revoked for before I can reapply? And so, and at least in the state of Michigan, it's revoked for a minimum of 10 years for a second or third offense.
10 years, does that seem like a long time, or does that seem like a short time? Because I can't.
That's decide. A long time. Are you 10 years?
That's kind of what I thought, but not knowing, what the actual, how the law works and everything like that. I was wondering if that was actually a long time or a short time.
Yeah, that's a long. Any time is too long for an individual, who operates motor vehicles with a CDL to lose it for any period of time. So, and look, there's a big myth out there, folks. If an officer approaches you on the side of the road or at another location, and he or she is investigating you, whether you are on an ORV or a sled or a motor vehicle or a truck, and at some point the officer requests that you submit to a PBT or a chemical test, for whatever reason, there's a myth out there that you should refuse, and it will work to your benefit. At that point, and yes, I believe in the Fourth Amendment against illegal search and seizure. But if you are in a motor vehicle and you know that you've been consuming alcohol or some other substance and you've consumed a little too much and you may be over the legal limit, and an officer requests that you submit to a test, whichever state you live in, check the laws, because in the state of Michigan, if you refuse, the penalties are severe. You will get 6 points on your driving record. There are CDL penalties, and you'll lose your ability to operate a motor vehicle for a period of 1 year, despite what happens to the case itself. So whether or not you are charged with a misdemeanor and or felony under the motor vehicle code, now there's a whole separate matter in regards to your ability to operate a motor vehicle called an implied consent issue. So do not refuse to take the PBT or the chemical test, either blood or breath. Just do not do it. And there's another question, Craig, that arises. If my blood is drawn in the state of Michigan, does it have to be from a phlebotomist? That's another, I'll get these questions all the time at my office. I was arrested. They took me to the hospital. I consented to the blood draw, which you should do. Always consent, as I just said. And, my understanding is it wasn't a phlebotomist. It was just a nurse, who drew my blood, who did the blood draw. So, does that mean that can be suppressed? A lawyer can file a motion and have it thrown out. I mean, you can surely try to do that, but I've seen case law and some, policy and rulings that as long as there's a medical doctor supervising, the department and the procedure of the blood taken, the blood draw taking place, then, the courts have ruled that is not going to be suppressed. So you have to follow the chain of command, make sure it's not tainted, follow the analysis that the state police lab utilized in determining, the blood serum and the blood alcohol content. And like Mike Nichols, like we talked with Mike last week on the show,
right?
Hire an attorney such as myself, that's not a solicitation, or Mike Nichols, that knows how to attack the analysis and follow the chain of command of that blood draw. Just because there may be an issue along the way does not mean that the case is going to completely be thrown out. It just may call for a suppression motion to try to suppress those test results from the jurors ever, seeing that evidence whatsoever. But this draws us back to the question of, full circle to the commercial driver's license. In the state of Michigan, and I just found this out some time ago, if your CDL was taken indefinitely and it's been 10 years, the federal government just threw it back to the states, Craig. So the federal government, if you're listening out there somewhere around this great country, because we have listeners in every state that download this show, and for whatever reason you lost your CDL indefinitely and have not been able to get it back, at least in the state of Michigan, the federal government has said, okay, Secretary of State, we want you to make the determination as to whether or not that person is now worthy and meets the qualifications and requirements and the standard of proof to once again utilize a CDL. So if you or someone out there lost your CDL for a multitude of reasons, and it's been 10 or more years in the state of Michigan, you can now appeal and petition the Secretary of State. The same attorneys, the same administrative hearing officers that I appear in front of week in and week out. And there's a whole standard of proof that can be presented to these attorneys to make a good determination as to whether or not, since it's been more than 10 years, and you should once again be granted the ability to operate with a CDL. That's some big news there, Craig.
That is some big news, and that's some information, and we've talked about that on numerous shows, especially with Biker Bob on and people like that. We've had a lot of this kind of information. So we do have some more law to get to, and I actually have a couple of questions I want to ask you about, but we do have to take a break on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, turning it and burning it and coming back strong with Genesis and one of Todd's favorite, all-time favorite bands with a lead singer who goes away and does a solo thing and then comes back. I think that's the category. That's a Home by the Sea.
No, the category is the only drummer during Live Aid who performed at Wembley and then flew to the United States on one of those. I can't. What was it? I don't remember that jet.
It was the not the supersonic, but the
no.
It was the
what was
I know
that?
What you're talking about? Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Did he go from New York to?
He went from Philadelphia.
From New York to
He went from Philadelphia to London, and it was on the Concorde. That was the name of the jet.
The Concorde. That's right.
Concorde. That was the name of the jet.
Concorde.
The supersonic jet.
Yeah. By the way, Craig.
Yes.
People often ask, you always refer, Todd, to implied consent suspension. What is implied consent? And basically, implied consent means that, you're considered to have agreed, to such testing. Consent is implied by driving a motor vehicle. So if you're operating a motor vehicle around this country in certain states, such as Michigan, implied consent law in Michigan is in full effect. And consent is implied by driving a motor vehicle, meaning that if an officer requests that you submit to a test, consent is implied. And if you refuse, then, you're looking at a 1-year suspension of your driving privileges, albeit a circuit court judge does have the authority under certain statutory circumstances to grant restrictions for that period of time. But there's other factors that are involved with that. And your operator chauffeur's license, Craig, may also be suspended or revoked, and points may be added to your driving record under this implied consent refusal, plus 6 points, of course. So that's really important to know that.
So to break this down in layman's terms, if I'm getting what you're saying, if implied consent, in other words, if you refuse to, does this have to do with refusing to take the blood test, right?
Yeah, it takes place in, circumstances where individuals, may have been operating a motor vehicle with, alcohol or certain legal or otherwise illegal controlled substances and they're on a public roadway, and officer, stops that individual, has some type of probable cause, and then after an investigation, the officer makes a determination based on certain factors that this person, may be intoxicated. I mean, it's a very small threshold. Then they will place you under arrest and ask you to submit to these tests, not the PBT at the scene.
Right.
That's a civil infraction in Michigan. It's when they say to you or request after they read you your chemical test rights, they also have to read you your chemical test rights. If they fail to do so, then the whole thing is a moot issue there. But, people out there, as I said in the prior segment, there's some myth out there that you should refuse to take these tests. Do not refuse to take that test. It's 6 points and loss of your driving privileges potentially. But Craig,
hold on before you go any further. So to break this down so people can understand,
I'm full of Pedialyte right now. I am fired up.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I have to go to the bathroom, by the way.
I was going to say, not only you're full of it, but you're just.
And I will not bring my phone with me this time. Trust me.
Please don't.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, so when you're on a website and you're getting ready to click go or accept or okay, and underneath it in the little fine print it says, if you click okay, you accept our terms and conditions. A lot of websites, like if you order a pizza online or something like that, when you hit order, you've accepted their terms and conditions. So not knowing that, when you get a driver's license, it is already determined that you are applying consent. In other words, by taking the driver's license and driving on a public road, you are consenting to being able to have to take a blood test if you're asked to. It's that same kind of deal, right?
That's correct. It's implied, but most people have no idea.
Right.
They don't teach you that in driver's ed. Hey, by the way, now that you have the ability to operate a motor vehicle in whichever state you reside in, if an officer has probable cause or some kind of reasonable suspicion that you may be intoxicated from controlled substance or otherwise, it's implied you have to consent to that test. And there are penalties. Now, again, it goes by state to state to state. The podcast is downloaded all over the country, so check with the laws in the state in which you live in. If you want to shoot us an email, I'm happy to look it up for you.
And then you should do that. And that's Todd Levitt Lawshow at gmail.com if you want to email, or you can email the firm, or you can call 989-772-6000, Todd Levitt, to call in Mount Pleasant. But you're right. That is something that people do not know, that they have already, the minute you accept that driver's license and get in the car and turn the key, you have implied that you will already consent to that. So if you deny it, if you say, I'm not going to do it, that's a big deal. And that's a bad
here's something
thing.
else you should never do. I got some advice for the listeners out there.
Okay.
I get these cases. I've been doing this, since 1994. I've been a defense attorney. And this past week, one of the cases that sticks out in my noggin is the young man, and I think I mentioned this to Mike Nichols, who was walking down Main Street during Welcome Back weekend, and was so drunk, just plopped right in the back of a cop car and was charged with a minor possession of alcohol. Well, last week, with St. Patty's Day taking place and us being in a college town,
sure.
I had a client who called me after he bonded out after being arrested for operating while intoxicated, $700 bond, and got out on bond and first offense. But his friend who was with him that night as a passenger walked back to their apartment, got in his vehicle, and drove to the jail drunk, attempted to bond him out. And when he knocked on the door because it was locked, a deputy walked up and ended up arresting him for drinking and driving. Yeah. So do not, a lot of individuals I've represented over the years, I'd say more than 50% were already home, were already in a safe place, and they either were on their way to the store to buy cigarettes, more alcohol, or they weren't planning on going out, and then they made that poor choice at the last minute, got behind the wheel. And again, there's a lot of tragedy out there. I've known a lot of men and women who have lost a lot of loved ones as a result of drinking and driving. And so people often ask me, as a defense attorney, how can you justify representing these people? Well, look, everybody's entitled to have their constitutional rights protected. Everybody's entitled to a defense, and everybody's innocent till proven guilty. So, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of tragedy out there, and I never overlook that when I represent people who drink and drive. But, and as I said before, when I was younger, I was no angel. I could have been pulled over 1,000 times and not proud of it, and I'm very lucky, and thank goodness I didn't kill anybody, including myself, or get caught and in trouble, but I don't judge other people, Craig. But my point is, a lot of these individuals, they're already home, or they get hungry, and so 3 o'clock in the morning, they're going up to the store or Taco Bell or one of the drive-thrus, and often some of these fast food workers will notice someone who's highly intoxicated, and they'll call 911. And that's how the individual ends up getting arrested for operating while intoxicated as well. But this individual last week, he was so drunk, he wanted to go bond his friend out, which he wouldn't have been able to do in the first place because his friend wasn't even there. My client was on his way to the hospital for a blood draw.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Wow,
so anyway, that's, I mentioned that, and someone chuckled at it because you do chuckle, but it's pretty serious. And now both of them are in trouble for operating while intoxicated.
And again, you don't want to see that happen. It's unfortunate that that's what alcohol will do to you. It'll make you make bad decisions like that, and that's one of them. So, oh boy, man. Hey, we got to get to the email question about getting your driver's license restoration process happening if you live out of state. Do we not?
We do, and I have a little bit of information on that because we do a lot of out-of-state license restorations. And Craig, are you enjoying that ice cream cake? And I'm talking about the cross between wedding cake and gelato over there. I'm not talking about my birthday cake. That is actual ice cream cake over there. And that goes out to Eugene. So big shout out to Eugene up in Prescott for the strain of the week ice cream cake. That's one of his favorite strains.
Okay, that's good to know. And your birthday is next week? I didn't know that.
I mean, every day's a birthday. Every day you're one day older, Craig, right?
That's a fine point.
Hey, there you go.
Anyway, back to driver's license restoration. Let's talk about that.
So if, again, downloaded, the show is heard in all 50 states. If you're an individual and let's say the state of Michigan, because that's where we're located, and at one point you unfortunately obtained, one or more convictions for drinking and driving, and your license was denied and revoked. Now you move from Michigan to Ohio, to Florida, to Texas. You move out of state. Out of state, you go to the Department of Motor Vehicle, you apply for a license, and possibly that state will grant you a license, but because Michigan is part of an interstate compact with all 50 states now, at some point the system will catch up. That state will send you a notification that license that you were issued is no longer valid, and you have to go back to the state of origin, aka Michigan, and have Michigan clear up or remove the hold on your driver's license so that you can now apply in the state in which you live in for a driver's license. So the process is simply the same as if you lived in state, with the exception if you're denied and revoked in the state of Michigan and you move to Texas or New York or Florida, what we do is an out-of-state application. It's an administrative review. You have to meet the same standard of proof that you're sober and likely to remain sober and not likely to reoffend, and that you have permanently left the state of Michigan, and we provide proof of such. And if you meet the burden of proof, Michigan will remove the denial and revocation, and therefore, whichever state you live in, you are free to now apply for driving privileges, CDLs, chauffeur's license, in that particular state. So if you lived in one state, you now live in another state, and you cannot get a driver's license, you have to go back to the state of origin, folks, where you once resided, clear it up there. I get calls all the time, Craig, from individuals who moved to Michigan, lived in Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Montana, and they picked up a drunk driving here in Michigan, but Michigan won't grant them a license. And I say, first, you have to clear up your issues in the state in which you originally were licensed as a young man or woman, you see? So it's whichever state had jurisdiction over your license in the first place when you became denied and revoked, not suspended. There's a difference between being suspended. When you are suspended, there's always a start and an end period as to when that suspension will terminate, and you can pay a reinstatement fee and do some other things that are required depending upon which state you live in to get your license back. In Michigan, if you're denied and revoked, that means you're revoked. It's gone indefinitely, and you have to follow these administrative rules and procedures and fill out an application and appear before an administrative hearing judge. Now, if you live out of state and you lived in Michigan at one time and you're not licensed because Michigan had you denied and revoked, you don't even actually appear for a hearing. It's all done, through paperwork and through certain procedures that, as an attorney, I know how to follow. So you don't ever have to appear in person. But if you do live out of state, we file the application and you get denied for whatever reason, you do have the ability within 30 days to apply for an in-person hearing to object or appeal to the state's denial. So if you're out of state, you fill out an application, you send it into the state, and the state says, nah, we don't like your application. Well, now within 30 days, you have a right to appeal that and appear in person to contest, why they refuse to grant you privileges. That's probably pretty confusing there, Craig.
No, not really. I think
I'm being a little bit redundant.
Yeah, but that's fine.
It's the applesauce.
The applesauce and the Pedialyte.
I'm literally eating applesauce.
Yeah, you're already chugging the whole jar down, but not confusing and not redundant. But you might want to review the show on the podcast. So
the bottom line is, if you live out of state and you can't get a driver's license in whichever state you live in, you have to go back to the state of origin that originally denied and revoked you and took your privileges away. Clear up that state, get that state to release the hold on you. So then whichever state you live in, you can go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, they call it all over the country. And now that state should grant you privileges. You see, that makes sense.
That does make sense. And it probably is easier for people who are from Michigan who move to another state to contact you to get things cleared up in Michigan.
Yeah, we do that all the time. But this applies all over the country.
But I'm just saying, if you live in Arizona and then you've moved to Michigan and you need to get your Arizona stuff taken care of.
Yeah, I can't clear that up.
Yeah, calling you isn't going to work. You've got to do it.
But that's what I'm saying. It's the state of origin. So if you move to Michigan, but Arizona, jacked you up that way, clear up Arizona. Yeah. And then if you have issues in Michigan after that, then call me.
989-772-6000. We do have to take a break on the Todd L. Levitt Law Show. We'll be right back to wrap the show up.
To the right, picking up the pieces, putting them away. Something doesn't feel quite right. Help me, someone, let me out of here. Then out of the dark we suddenly heard, welcome to the home by the sea.
Welcome back to the Todd L. Levitt Law Show, where we are abound with ice cream cake today, which is a cross, folks, between wedding cake and gelato. So coming in at 20% indica, very relaxing, Craig. You need to wake up. Too much ice cream cake, Craig, for you.
Too much ice cream cake.
Yeah.
Not enough wedding cake, whatever that even means. So where are
I just got a wedgie, by the way. Did you ever get Jen just gave me a wedgie. What is that? Who let her in the studio?
I have no idea. She's your wife. What are you talking about?
She didn't like the phone dropping comment early on. I outed us of the
she knows
the face.
She understands.
Hey, Craig, I've got a complaint.
Okay, please tell me.
Okay, this goes out to whomever's in charge of windmills. First off, I love the fact windmills. Yeah.
Okay.
Windmills. Is it wind? It's windmills, not windmills.
Correct. Windmills. Yep.
Windmills. I love the fact that all these men and women from all over the country, it keeps them employed. It keeps people working. I love that. And as long as I don't have to look at a windmill in my backyard, which I don't, they're nearby. They are very close. I can see them on the horizon, which is pretty cool at night. It looks like a carnival atmosphere. But my complaint is, on some of the windiest days of the year recently, at least where I reside, the windmills were not turning, okay? And this happened on more than one occasion. They seem to turn when it's not extremely windy out, and then when it's windy out, they're not turning, and I don't know who to call to say, hey, turn on the windmills. The wind is blowing at 25 miles an hour. What are they there for? They're not just there for the little red lights at night that blink off and on and look pretty sweet. So that's my complaint. I don't know who to call. I would like the 800 number, but turn those things on.
I know what you're talking, the big wind turbine things.
The wind turbines, yes, folks. Let me clarify that.
I'm like going,
for whatever reason, here in mid-Michigan, we live in a wind tunnel. So
yeah, there's a ton of them.
If you're listening around the country, look at the state of Michigan, smack dab in the middle, they found, whoever they are, that coming from the west, Lake Michigan, towards Wisconsin, heading to the east, straight across the middle of the mitten, is a wind tunnel because of the way the geography and the wind and the Great Lakes set up. Right, Craig?
Exactly. We get a lot of wind here.
Thousands of windmills around the various counties here. And some are very nearby to where I live. Not on top of me, but you can see them in the horizon. And I drive through them sometimes on wherever I'm going. And the other day, the wind was just blowing hardcore. I mean, hardcore to the point where, I'm driving in my truck hoping that nothing falls on my noggin. And nothing was turning. The turbines were not turning. And I'm just thinking, is little John in charge of that? Who's in charge of turning those things on?
You would think the wind would be, wouldn't it? If it was windy enough, wouldn't that be turning them on?
I mean, somebody, went to the expense to put 1,000 of them up in this region. I just want to know who needs to turn them on. That's all. Maybe they're not online yet. I mean, there's nobody else working here. Everybody left town and went home. They're done.
Yeah, but you would think the wind would be. That would just be a case of the wind doing it, wouldn't you?
I'm not really sure. But, hey, I mentioned at the offset of the show a bullet point of cop at gas station.
Yes. What was that all about?
Well, I was Zooming in the great state of Superior, God's country, the Upper Peninsula a couple of weeks back. I stayed an extra night in the backcountry, and I had a hearing the next day. And because the courts are closed and you're able to Zoom, I happened to pull into, I was in the middle of nowhere. I'm not going to say where, but I was in the middle of nowhere. And I had to Zoom, and I didn't even know if I'd have a signal. I have Wi-Fi in my truck, so I pull over into this corner lot off a road, and I'm parked facing the trees, and I set up the laptop. I have a shirt, suit, tie on, and apparently, a trooper was right behind me, pulled right behind me, like right behind my truck. I don't know if he was running my plate or whatnot, but then he came up to my window. And I'm talking to the judge and my client. I can't even say anything to this trooper, but I wasn't doing anything wrong. And I wasn't even doing maybe I look suspicious because I'm in the middle of nowhere in a truck with a suit and tie and with a computer. I'm not sure what that defines as being suspicious. But afterwards, I finished up, and he liked my truck. So he wanted to, he was just taking a break. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking through my rear view mirror, okay, and I'm trying to focus and pay attention to the judge and my client and whatnot. I had a fake screen on. When you can Zoom, I have a beach scene, I have a mountain scene, sure. I have a Lego scene, a Legos movie scene, and the Muppets. So, and so on this day, I think I was in the mountains with a court, but I couldn't say anything, and I'm trying to focus and concentrate. So finally, I end, and I roll down the window, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm a card holder. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong here. And I support all our troopers out there. Big shout out to all the troops out there. They do a great job. I know a lot of them. So, big shout out to all the troopers in Michigan. And he was so cool. I'm not going to say where I was or what post it was because, like I said, he was just doing his job. But he just liked my truck and wanted to tell me that.
Oh, well, that's cool. At least it was something.
He was checking it out. He was checking it out because I'm not going to mention what I'm driving or what I was driving. But, yeah, it's pretty cool. I got a pretty cool suspension all the way around.
Again, at least it was something like that. It wasn't, another situation that could be.
No, but I'm wondering why is it? He wasn't like right on me when an officer pulls the car over. He was parked respectfully, way back. But I just wondered, God, why is he sitting behind me? I'm not doing anything wrong. I got nothing to hide. I believe in the Constitution.
Still,
nobody's searching my car. Not that I have anything to hide. But now, actually, in all seriousness, I was trying to focus on the court. I'm in court at this time.
Yeah.
So I hung up and I rolled my window down and I kind of opened, I didn't open my door because you don't ever do that. He wasn't like walking up investigating or anything, but eventually we did talk, and I know a lot of troopers, so we knew some common people, but I got a kick out of that. And I thought the audience would enjoy hearing that story.
and
So he was just saying, "Hey, I really like your truck." That's all.
And obviously, he didn't know you were an attorney or anything like that, so we had no clue.
Well, I can tell you this, Craig. He sure found out after I started talking.
Yeah, he did. That's when he turned around and walked away. No.
Often when clients meet me, a lot of times I think they think I'm some short, heavy, overweight, bald guy, and that I'm kind of the complete opposite of that. I'm 6 feet tall. I've got long black hair, even though I'm 56, and I look like a rock and roll guy here with long hair, and
Wait,
I'm not short, stubby, or bald.
You're not 5'4" and about 400 pounds. Who have I been talking to this whole time?
I think I'm a cross between Sylvester Stallone and probably Frank Sinatra. What do you think, Craig?
I think Frank Sinatra can sing better, but that's another story.
You know what? I do listen to. I think we should break out some Frank Sinatra next week on the show.
I think we can definitely do that. So
yeah.
Hey, speaking of this week,
I was 21.
Okay, all right.
It was a very good year.
Speaking of this show, we got to get going. The show's over.
Come on, let's sing some Frankie.
All right.
That goes out to my cousin AZ, a little Frankie.
I did it my way. Okay.
Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra. Come on, Craig.
Come on, Todd. The show's over. We got to go, man.
We got to go. We'll see you next time, next week, same place. And we're not here for a long time. What are we here for, Craig?
We're here for a good time, Todd.
Take us out.
Before the time when we first heard, welcome to the home by the sea. Sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down, sit down. As we relive our lives in what we tell you, let us relive our lives in what we tell you. Sit down, sit down, sit down, 'cause you won't
The Todd L. Levitt Law Show, brought to you by Chad Malley Well Drilling of Rosebush, Clark Modular Homes, your most experienced and trusted builder in Mount Pleasant, and attorney Todd L. Levitt, not just a litigator, he's an advocator.
Opinions expressed on this radio program do not necessarily reflect the views of this radio station.